Action.
Action.
Okay, we wanted to film and walk you all through 2 years later after starting the van build. And the last time we sat here and actually did build videos, about 2 years ago this month, is when we were working on the floor. Now that I've been on the road for over 2 years, on and off, we know a little bit about what we would do differently and how we would build differently. So from layout to materials that we use to things that I think would just make van life a little bit easier in terms of how I would have built it differently, we wanted to just walk you through that. The one thing though to note is that when we did originally build this, I was on a budget between $10,000 and $12,000 for the entire build, which is why we did what we did. Anything to add? Okay. So just to walk you through everything that I would have done differently, here's a quick little snippet and glimpse at what we're going to talk about the rest of the time. We'll walk you through in a more detailed fashion, but just to start, the first thing that we would do differently is the subfloor adhesive that we chose. We would also put my diesel heater in a different spot than we have it now, just to save space. I would have lowered this bed. It is very tall, which means that I don't have as much storage space that I would have liked above the bed. It's all under, which if you're a van lifer already, you know how annoying that is. So I would have done that differently, and I would have changed the general layout inside of the van with counters and benches just to open up the space a little bit.
So one of the first things we did is we put the subflooring in. In order to get the framing to adhere to the van, we used PL 400
Subfloor.
subfloor glue.
One thing we did that I do not recommend, and like fully like just don't do this, we used PL 400 subfloor as our adhesive,
which we didn't realize at the time took 72 hours to fully cure. So being somewhat antsy, wanting to move things forward and continue the build, it was a little bit frustrating when we waited overnight after we put the framing in, and it still wasn't completely cured and solid.
And that's after we put weights on it. We put like a TV.
So if you refer to Danielle's prior YouTube video on the subfloor, you'll see,
which I will link over here,
our garage sale worth of stuff that we use to provide weight on all the different framing. But I would suggest if we do it again, and if you were going to use the PL 400, which ultimately provided a solid seal, it just took a lot longer than we anticipated. And then also ultimately, if you're going to do that and you're gluing your framing to the van, again, make sure you've got sufficient weight that's dispersed over the entire flooring, and you're going to need to let it set for a couple days.
Like when we say significant weight, like we had every single weight that we had from like 12 pounds to 40 pounds, I think.
Well, then we had landscaping bricks.
Oh yeah, pavers, landscaping pavers.
We had all kinds of stuff.
Like you need a lot of weight. But with all of that said, obviously it's 2 years later and the van is still intact. Fingers crossed, I'm not jinxing that. But like there's no issue with the floor being attached to everything else.
You don't have any loose.
There's nothing loose.
Anywhere.
It's totally fine. It was just like a struggle while we were building it.
Right. Just took
Something small. I would have just put a light under the garage, because if it's dark outside and I'm trying to come under the garage, it's very hard to see what I'm doing unless I have my flashlight. But something a little bit bigger, we would have built a roof rack on top of the van instead of putting the solar panels directly into the van roof, which also means we had to put the Weeboos directly onto the roof, which is a huge magnet that doesn't actually stay. It is blown off on the highway and like kind of torn up the back of the van a little bit. It works, but we would have just made the roof rack to make it a little more simple. I would have also added 100 more watts of solar and 1 more lithium-ion battery, just so my van had more off-grid capacity. The one last thing would be more room for my feet at the end of the bed. So we will get more into that and how we think we would do that differently, but my feet do touch and I'm only 5'6". It can get a little annoying sometimes. And then 2 things that are just very simple. I would have immediately added gas struts to my cabinets. I still don't have them added, and it's probably my #1 van pet peeve at the moment. just to keep them open. And then I think it would be really cool if I had a slightly longer van to add a window on the roof, just because there's so many places I go,
Skylight.
like a skylight. And if I don't want to go outside or it's cold to see the stars, like I could literally see it or open the window for my bed. So I would actually choose to do that over a roof deck. I wanted a roof deck originally. Dad vetoed that very early on, so that never happened. But skylight over a roof deck. So we'll now kind of jump into the details.
Okay, so 2 things with the bed. One was lowering the bed, and one is making more room when lying down. So just to start with, these are the most used cabinets in the van, probably. I have all my clothes in there. It's very messy right now, so I'm not gonna show you that part. But I very much appreciate having these up here. The only problem is they don't fit a whole lot, and so I have so much stuff underneath that I like to get, especially when it's a little bit colder. I have cold wintry stuff down there, and it would just be really helpful if I had the same cabinets also over here, just so I didn't have to worry about going under the garage. I'd probably actually use a little bit more up here, and have that extra storage for whatever I felt that I needed it for. And lowering the bed is the only way that that would happen, because as you can see, if I was sleeping over here, like that wouldn't work out very well. That is why I would lower the bed, for more storage up overhead. Okay, so just as an example of why I would do the bed a little bit longer, we cut 2.5 inches off of the mattress when I got it lengthwise, which was really sad after buying a new mattress. When we measured, we were like, oh, I fit perfectly because there wasn't a pillow. So if Tripp is my pillow and I'm laying here, I actually touch. So this can get really annoying at night every once in a while when you actually are trying to sleep and your feet are touching something every single night. So because of that, I would have done differently. Under the bed here, there's actually about probably 2-ish inches of space where you could cut it at an angle down and then come back down over here under where you see. The reason we didn't do that though is because, one, probably because I was being uptight about a timeline of wanting to get on the road. 2, because it was gonna be a lot more work to try to figure out how to angle it, especially because we were using shiplap. But it was gonna be pretty complicated to try to get those extra 2 inches. But now that I've been living in this, that is like a must. I would really prefer to have more space at the feet. And one example of how that would happen is if we go over here, our window framing that we did for the van, obviously you can see that there are probably about 2.5 inches behind this wall that we would get on the other side as well if we just built it out, did a little dip and around. So it's possible. We could have just done it on the other side.
We're gonna have a separate YouTube video on the installation of the diesel heater in the area that we decided to put it in, but just how we installed it, some of the challenges that we ran into and how we overcame some of those obstacles.
Another thing that we would do differently is the layout of the inside. Don't get me wrong, I very much love my layout that I have. There's not really a whole lot of issues that I do have with it, but it can get a little tight, especially when Tripp's on the ground and then there's another person in the van with me. There's just a lot going on here. Like, as you can see, like, that's just, it's not a whole lot of space. So what I would do differently is take this counter space and move it over here. Not necessarily the sink here, but I would just have this whole side as a counter. And then by doing that, it opens up this space. You wouldn't need this back necessarily, and you would have an entire bench right here, and you could extend that bench into this part of the van. So then you basically just have counter, bench, and then open space, and this would be lower, so it would just open it up a little bit. And you might ask, where does the toilet go if you do that? Because currently the toilet slides out from under the bed. If I lowered the bed, I'd already have to move the toilet. So the bench would just be slightly higher, and the toilet would pull out sideways, just right into the middle like it does right now, just from under the bed. I personally just think that would make it a little more open. There is a downside to that. When you're doing dishes, you're looking at a wall, you're not looking at the pretty views. Another downside of that though would be, Dad was really smart and added this this like take your water out of here thing. So, and that is probably like the most used part of this van. I don't have to come back here and get it out. Like, it just slides out from right there. Wouldn't be able to have that. I just think it would be a little more open, a little more user-friendly in that way. I cannot express how important having gas struts would be. Opening these and then trying to get plates out, like for dinner, or I just want a cup, but watch. So first I have to go like this, which can get a little painful, but then you need to do this because if I'm trying to get like this mug, I need 2 hands to get this mug out. If I had gas struts, it would be holding it for me and it would be glorious. Also, I'm so sorry for how messy this is, but gas struts.
So Danielle mentioned one of the changes that we probably would reconsider is how we mounted the solar panels on the van. I think at the end of the day, everybody would agree you want to avoid penetrating the shell of the van as much as possible to avoid any sort of leaks. Knock on wood, we have, and every time she's come back from a trip, we've double checked all of our caulking and recaulked and whatnot. But I think what we would have done differently is probably mounted the solar panels on aluminum extruding, which you know, you can connect to these particular areas of the van and then mount the solar panels directly on top of the aluminum. The Wii Boost, that guy over there in the corner, she would have mounted that on it as well.
Wait, add on how it's not supposed to look like that.
What?
It's broken. It's like cut in half right now.
Yeah, as you can tell, the Wii Boost is seen better days. It functions, but after being blown off the top of the van multiple times, it's...
No, it's not just that, and the dealership broke it. The dealership broke it!
Yeah, I think it was a combination. But anyway, that could have been mounted to the aluminum extruding as well.
So one of the main things that I personally feel that I really would have changed is my whole battery setup. I originally went into this, like I said in the beginning, with a very budget-oriented mindset. I'm still that way, but because of that, I felt one lithium-ion battery was enough. The reason I went with a lithium-ion battery, even though they are the most expensive types of battery, is I did a whole lot of research, seemed like the best option, and one of the main reasons behind that is my van battery. So the whole setup, so frustrating, could drop below 50% without damaging the battery. My battery has dropped way below 50% on many occasions, and so that just further proves why I went with a lithium ion. But it should not go below 50% if I had another battery for extra battery storage. For instance, if I'm in the mountains, I'm off grid, I'm camping, I don't want to move my van every 2 days. If I'm not getting enough solar, then I'm not going to be building up that power storage back. With that said, if I had another battery, I'd have more storage and I'd have more days off grid without moving. Granted, a lot of this has to go back to the idea that my whole DC to DC charger while I'm driving doesn't necessarily do what it should be doing unless I pop a breaker, and that's a whole nother issue. But with that said, having another battery, I think just 200 amp lithium ion batteries in the back, I think would make a world of difference to be a little bit more off grid. While we're talking about the battery, I also just wanted to touch on solar. I have 200 watts of solar. If it's sunny, it will fill up my battery very, very quickly, but if it is not, it's somewhat cloudy, it's much slower. I probably would have gone with 300 to 400 watts of solar instead of 200, and that is something that can still be done on a budget. I think each one of these solar panels was like $100, so adding 200 watts of solar would be, let's say, just $200 more, and that is something that is very feasible and pretty needed, in my opinion, especially when it is cloudy or you're in areas where it's not as a powerful sun. So if you didn't want to get another battery because they're about $800, if you just got 200 more watts of solar, the benefit of that would far outweigh the cost of the $200 that you'd have to spend on that. So that would be my recommendation. If you're on a budget, go for solar first and then the battery. But if you have the budget, load up on your battery and your solar. Just quick on under the bed storage. It can be frustrating at night when I want to go find something under the bed and it's really dark. So having just a under bed quick light thing would be super helpful.
It's like a cave.
So hopefully some of those suggestions will be helpful as you get into your van build. Danielle's giving me more airtime. So if you like this video, please like it, subscribe. Hopefully some of these suggestions are useful. Love to answer any questions that you have. Danielle will. Thanks. And have yelling in my ear. Merry Christmas.
What's the word for like having to do with battery?
What?
Like wall disc.
Storage? What?
You know when you're like, while we're on the topic of the battery, let's talk about like they're intertwined. There's a word for that. Whatever. The cost of the solar panels far outweighs. I said that backwards.
The benefits far outweigh the cost.
If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe.
Don't be so excited. Let's start that over.